Okay, awesome. So now we're recording for those of us that could not be here at this time. And just the point of this event is to talk to some of our past alumni and get to know where they are right now and for them to give us some advice so that we can use that to become successful like they have become. So we're going to start out with some introductions, and then we have some prepared questions for you guys. Also, if anyone on this call has any questions throughout, you can go ahead and just leave them in the chat, or at the end we can take like actual verbal questions as well. There'll be time for that. So again, if you have any questions that you want to ask them, feel free to do so, jot them down. And we're just going to begin then with some introductions. So if all of you guys could tell us just what your major was, maybe what year you graduated in, some of the organizations, the clubs, the things that you were involved in at Arizona State University. And then also, if you guys want to tell us maybe the different companies you have interned at and where you guys are currently ended up with your job right now. So Kat's the first one on my screen if you want to start with your introduction.
Yeah, okay, so I was a mechanical engineering major and I had a minor in art history. At ASU, I was a member of SWE ASU, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Energy, which basically creates the codes that we need to make buildings work, engineering-wise. I was also a part of the NASA Grant Robotics Club, kind of during my freshman and sophomore year as just like an extracurricular activity. I currently work at Henderson Engineers, which is an HVAC, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire consulting firm. So an architect will come and contact us on equipment that they need to make their buildings work and make them comfortable. And then prior to ASU, I was an intern at Stryker Orthopedics, and I was a Harvard Amgen research fellow. So that's a kind of like fancy way of saying that I interned and did something totally different with my career. So the internship opportunities that I had have nothing to do with what I do now.
That's really great. And then Emily, if you want to go next.
Awesome. So sorry guys, I'm eating because I'm hungry. But what would a SWE meeting be without free food? But anyways, I'm Emily. I did my undergrad in chemical engineering, and then I did my master's in the 4+1 program in material science and engineering. So I just finished that this past May, and then I finished my undergrad the May before, so May 2019. I had a minor in business, and I was in Barrett. Other than this, I was involved in research. I did Fulton Ambassadors, honestly like a ton of different clubs, but they're like all professional development, which I would like not suggest as much. Like they're great, but also do like some hands-on stuff, like switch it up is what my advice is. Where I interned at Disney for a year. So I like took off between my junior and senior year and interned there. I interned at Cummins, the diesel engine company, in like a small town in Indiana, which is why I didn't end up there. And then I currently work at NXP Semiconductors in Chandler. So like think like Intel, very similar, but our products are for different uses. So mine go into cars, and I'm sure Aniki will talk about what hers go into. So I think that's it. But yeah.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And then Nikki, if you wanted to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Aniki Giesler. I have both my degrees in chemical engineering. So I graduated with my bachelor's in 2017 and then my master's in 2019. At ASU, I was involved in AKI, and then I also did research in the chemistry department. And then my master's degree, I did research with Brent Ananga. Currently, I work at Intel as a supply chain engineer. So it's a little bit different than what other chemies have gone. Most chemies get hired at Intel to do. I work hands-on and manage all the technical requirements of Intel suppliers, specifically the thermal commodities, so mostly polymers. And I interned at Intel a few times and then also with Henkel Consumer Goods as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for that. And we'll go ahead and just jump right into the questions. So one of our prepared ones was, about your technical skills and how much of what you learned in school do you use day to day. So I know that like a lot of the times companies kind of like teach you kind of their own ways to do things and you like learn a lot at companies. So can you talk about that balance between what you like learned in your studies at school and what you're currently learning and using today in your job? And we can start with Kat.
Yeah, so that's true. I use probably equal or less than 10% of what I learned at ASU. Unfortunately and fortunately, at the same time, you do learn a lot just on the job. So the things that I do use at work are heat transfer, thermo, fluids, just kind of relating those concepts in an overall big picture to systems and things and making them work based on those principles. And then one of my technical electives that I took my spring semester of senior year, which was energy efficient buildings and systems. I just ended up in that class because everything else happened to be closed, and I had heard different things about the professor, and that class was actually a really great introduction to my now career. So pick your technical electives carefully, try to get into something, even if you don't know what you're going into, it can be a really good introduction into the industry if you choose them correctly.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I use very little of what I learned, at least in my undergrad. A lot of it is thermo and heat transfer, but the majority of what I used from my education was from electives. So like polymers, and then also Emily took this class too, like materials processing in the materials department. I use the stuff I learned in that class like almost every day on my job. So yeah, I would say electives are kind of where you get the most hands-on experience or real world kind of introduction to what you'll actually use on your job.
I would say for my work that I use my master's degree more, which is the one in material science. So my proper title is yield enhancement engineer. And what that basically means is that if there's defects on our products, I'm trying to figure out what is like the root cause of that and how can we have less defects so that we're able to sell more product. And so that's mostly what my team focuses on, and specifically my specialty that I did for my master's is like nano defects in like metallurgical materials, and that's like basically what my job is. So I look at metal layers in semiconductors. Those are the layers that I'm responsible for, and I'm looking at like why are those our defects. So I use a lot of my master's, but also when I was looking for a job, I really didn't want to be using my chemical engineering degree, to be honest. So I really was aiming towards using my material science. I use my chemical engineering degree in the form of like just the processes in general and being able to like understand a process from beginning to end and like timing that things need to happen at, and just understanding people's tools that's like the equipment that they're using to do the processes. But since I'm not in charge of a tool, I don't really apply it in that way. So yeah, I'm gonna go with what Kat said, and it's like 10% other than my master's degree. So I do use that quite a bit.
Okay, that's really great to hear. And then a question that like you guys all kind of mentioned masters too, that we also had that I'll just follow up with is like, did you pursue a master's degree? I know we like know the answer to that for some of you guys, but if so, how has it like benefited you guys? And like, would you recommend like maybe the 4+1 specifically like to students that are considering it right now? And if you guys could touch on master's degrees. And Emily, if you want to continue with that and start off.
Yeah, no problem. So I knew going in actually that I wanted to do my master's degree, but I was originally in chemical. So I was going to do back-to-back chemical. But I actually ended up switching it to material science after I'd already gotten into the 4+1 program, but before I graduated. And so like I knew that I just wanted to like get straight through and be done with school. But part of the reason that I ended up doing the internship at Disney for a year is that I knew I had my senior year and my +1 year left. And I was like, I honestly just need a break from school. Like it's a lot, especially when you get to the end of that 4 years. So for me, dividing it up where I did my 3 years of undergrad, then my internship at Disney, and then coming back for the 2, that like really helped me divide it up so that I just noticed like I came back with like a lot lower level of stress compared to like everyone around me, just from like being able to take a step back. And I'm glad I did my master's because I was able to do it in a different area that I found more interest in. I feel like some of the engineering you don't really figure out you don't like it until the very end. That was me junior year, spring semester, figuring out that maybe chemical engineering, making chemical plants is not really what I want to do, even if I'm good at it or whatever. And so I'm glad I did the master's, not only because I got that, but also just like you do start off at a higher pay rate, like pay amount. And also for NXP, I noticed that like everybody else has their masters. They don't really hire anyone who doesn't have it. And so I think you do have like an opportunity to get into more companies having had your masters. On the flip side, you are more expensive. And so maybe they don't always want you, but I do feel like for the most part, they take it as a benefit rather than a negative.
And Nikki, did you want to add anything to that?
So I did not do 4+1. I actually went into the PhD program directly after undergrad, and about a year and a half in, I decided it wasn't for me. I had already done multiple internships at various companies, and I liked working in industry more, to be honest. So I took the master's and took a full-time job at Intel. I would also say that most of the people I work with either have a master's. Well, I mean, I work in the supply chain group, so most have an MBA, and then all the technical people in that group usually have masters. So yeah, they definitely see it as a benefit. I would recommend it, either going with the 4+1 or pursuing the full 2-year master. Either way it's only a benefit.
Okay, thanks. And then Kat, do you have an opinion on the topic as well?
I have an opinion. I don't know if it counts. I don't have a master's. So I transferred into ASU. So I had done 2 years of school before going to ASU, and then I finished in about 3.5 years at ASU. So I was just burnt out, done. Like the thought of another even semester just couldn't deal with it. So thankfully, I didn't really need it for my job. Some people do have it and others don't, but it really hasn't been a big issue. So.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thank you guys all for sharing about master's degrees. Let me find another question for us. So another like technical based question, I guess, is what do you guys kind of recommend that we get involved in with in school right now to help us kind of land like our dream jobs? Like maybe what clubs, what like projects did you guys feel like really benefited you when you guys were like interviewing or like getting the job that you have right now?
I'll go.
Okay.
Okay, no, go for it, Kat.
I don't know which order we're going in, but basically I think something that I wish I was more involved in was ASHRAE, which is like an American society. So look for a professional organization that is like a standard that carries into industry. I feel like if I was more involved in ASHRAE, that would have given me a much better introduction into the people I actually now deal with on a daily basis. So professional society, SWE was a huge resource to me, even though I didn't find my job through SWE. It was great to have a support group. It was also good to feel like this was my niche. This was an area that I could help others and be successful at. That personally energizes me to do things that aren't really my strengths when I feel like I can contribute something. So SWE really served well in being a support group for me in that way.
Yeah, I would say also like all the American institutes, that those derivatives are pretty useful. They all generally transfer into industry, like Intel both continues on with SWE and AKI. Those are both clubs that you can join and stay involved in. Other than like extracurricular clubs though, I would definitely say research. I personally have never been in an interview where they've asked me like what clubs I'm in on campus. It's mostly about like your experience, and the only way you can get that really in undergrad is through an internship or research.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially in chemical engineering for our undergrad, we really like did not do projects at all. So I would say if you could get involved in something where you're building or you're making or designing something, I know it's a little harder on the chemical engineering side, but that kind of made it difficult for me to get internships because it was like I have no projects because we don't do any projects. Like we have group-based homework, but like that's it. And I know the program has changed a little bit, but I think that that was a struggle that I had for getting jobs. Totally agree with the like American institutes and stuff. They want to see that you're involved in something. So whether it be SWE or AICI or whatever it is, like join those organizations because they're always going to be good to see on your resume. And then I would say like I think that Fulton Ambassadors was probably the most useful one because I was like I talk to people all the time. I like am comfortable walking around campus, whatever. It just showed that like I'm really comfortable in whatever situation I'm in, and so I think that that like really showed it off for me. Yeah, that for the most part was what they asked about. But yeah, definitely the research, like Anaki said, even though I was like, yeah, I don't want to do research forever, it at least gave like a good talking point to be like, this is my research project. And like, then they could ask questions like, what problems did you face along the way? How did you overcome them? So it was easy because it was something I knew a lot about, even though like you go into research knowing nothing, like I knew a lot about it. So then when they interviewed me, like especially my topic, no one else in the world was researching it. So I was like, I really can't be wrong. It's just whatever I think. So yeah, that would be my feedback.
Yeah, and
Okay,
also say you get like a lot of hands-on experience with different metrologies that they definitely will ask you about in interviews.
Yeah.
So having that hands-on experience is definitely a benefit.
and can I ask you guys how you guys got into like your research? Because I know that that's something that's challenging, especially for like freshmen and sophomores, is like finding a research lab that like you're interested in, or like I know that there's research labs online, but sometimes it's like, well, what is this like even about? Because sometimes the like terms are complicated. So can you guys like tell me how you guys got involved in your research that you did while at ASU?
For my research, I actually went to an AICI meeting. So that's the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. So it's like their club. And they would have professors come in who are looking for people in their research lab. And they would talk about what their research is, and then you could talk to them afterwards. So I had a friend, Brandon, who was in Dr. Emity's lab. That's the lab that I ended up joining. So I knew like a little bit about it. And then she came and presented. And honestly, Chemi just had a lot of options I didn't like, which obviously, because I didn't like chemical engineering, learned that later. But I just went up to her afterwards and was like, your lab sounds really interesting. And she's like, okay, just send me an email with your resume on it and saying that you're interested. So then she looked at my resume and had me read like a few papers of hers. And then I spoke with her one-on-one with the PhD student that was like going to oversee me. And we talked about like why was my interest and all that. I don't think you should take it like, you know, like it's the most serious thing. Like don't put a lot of pressure on yourself because people are looking for hands in their research lab and they know that you're just trying to get experience. So don't like stress yourself out over it, take it seriously, but don't like it's not the end of the world. Maybe timing doesn't work out. The professor doesn't have any room in their lab, that kind of thing. But for the most part, like they're going to say yes and let you in. And if you email them and they don't respond, honestly, they just get like a million emails. And that's why. So I had a couple professors I emailed before that and just never got a response, but they're just literally so busy. So.
Whoops, I'm muted. Okay. I was also wondering, so I know that sometimes it can get overwhelming, like doing research and everything. I was wondering if you guys also feel a struggle for like a balance between like work and life in your current like jobs compared to like school. Like, how is that different? Is it like more stressful? Is it like a little more like relaxed?
Emily and I are just both laughing. Definitely in chemi, I'll say my job is nowhere near as stressful as undergrad in chemi.
I
Like
sleep
that
8
set the
hours a night.
bar.
Like I sleep
Yeah.
8 hours a night and I can sleep more if I want. Kemi could never.
Yeah. I think because like deadlines are not, I mean, obviously you have deadlines, but it's not like this has to be done at midnight this time and like you've got to work all night to get it done. Like I think definitely with COVID, industry has changed and there are some weeks where I feel like, okay, this is like chemi level stress, but in general, like for sure not as stressful as undergrad degree.
Yeah, definitely not at all like as far as I can tell, I mean, I have like, I would say a good work-life balance now. And even I'm studying for the eventually the professional engineering test, but like the one before it right now. And I'm not saying I'm doing a very good job of balancing it and actually studying for it, but like I'm able to do that and not feel stressed out. So I think it's been great. And I love that I'm not studying all the time anymore. With work, I think you do have like more challenges for like when you need to be on the clock and be available. With COVID, I've actually found it's like more flexible because I just like bring my laptop with wherever I'm going, but depending on your job, you may not be allowed to do that. So that's something to think about. I'm not sure like what the regular policy is. But yeah, good work-life balance, way better than school. Definitely for chemies. Can't really speak for anyone else, but chemies, like, you're gonna get sleep. It's gonna be so good.
I totally agree with that. I think that I've had, as opposed to like the weekly stresses of undergrad, I've had maybe like one day that was like that level of stress where it was a long night. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how it was going to get done, how I would figure it out. But I think overall, work-life balance is really up to you. My parents always told me that you're the one who teaches your boss how to treat you. So if you're working overtime, if you're working on the weekends, eventually that's going to be the expectation of you. So you're the one who kind of needs to set that up. Of course, you want to make sure that you're reliable and getting all your stuff done, and that they can depend on you to be there when there is a deadline and everybody is out there at midnight. You want to be that kind of person. But I would say overall, work-life balance is up to you. Like Emily, I'm also studying for my FE exam. ASU didn't tell me about the FE, so I kind of found that out. I wish they had, because that would have been great. Take your FE. It's literally a 5-hour exam over everything you did in undergrad. And once you're in industry, you're learning so much every day. The last thing you want to do is open a book on differential equations and have to relearn things. That's not fun. And it currently feels like, you know, the candle's burning at both ends. But yes, work-life balance is possible. It's great. It's better than undergrad, but it really is up to you and what you want to make of it.
I totally agree. I wish I'd taken the FE sooner. Like, I know I just finished in May, but having taken that 1 year off, I feel like makes it harder to remember the earlier stuff. And so that's been like a struggle for me to have to relearn that, because I'm like, I remember this being so easy and now I have to relearn it. Like, it's just fluids. That's what, like, so easy. That was my easiest class. And like, you know, so yeah, totally agree.
Are there any classes at ASU that kind of like support you with the FE that like help set you up for it? No?
The only person who does is Dr. Andino. She she writes the exam. Anaki, I think you were there when she talked to me about it. She writes the exams, I think. So she sometimes will hold sessions with like in conjunction with the Career Center to talk about it. And that's kind of the only thing or support, but like we are ABET accredited. I'm assuming everyone's program is, but because of that, like, I think we're all taught the material we need. Like, there wasn't really anything on my FE that wasn't in the core material other than one topic that just got added, but I took the elective for it. So like, I also already know that.
Okay, so it's just a lot of like self-studying.
She is the only professor, and she is chemical engineering. I emailed her before I graduated and she was like, I can't talk to you. I write the exam. So if you're mechanical and you want to know more about the SE or what's involved, like, seriously, email us. We will hook you up with all the websites and get you prepared, because the sooner you can take that before you get too involved in work, the better. It's such a huge relief.
Honestly, you probably like could go in without studying and just know the review book and you'd be fine. It's just like once you're out of it and you're not doing it every day, it's so hard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Wait, I have a quick question. Is that okay, Maya?
No, yeah, you're good.
So I've never heard of the FE. Could you give a brief explanation as to what it is? And then also, like, is it available for all engineering majors?
Yeah, Kat, do you want to explain it or do you want me to go?
I can start, and if I leave anything out, I think there are more chemical engineers here, but it's kind of standard. So the SE is the fundamentals of engineering, and it's a 5-hour exam, and it goes from everything from like geometry, even like calculus, all the way to like specifically for me, mechanical design. And there are different groups, of course, like core subjects that are more heavily weighted and have more questions. So that is the FE. It's just a massive exam. And then once you get that done, you wait a few years and you work under a professional licensed engineer. They'll sign off that, yes, you worked under them. You'll take another exam specific to your industry and what your job is. And then you will be a licensed engineer, an actual engineer.
Yeah.
And that usually increases your salary by about like $10,000. So like off the bat, if you have a PE behind your name, like bonus.
So oh, go ahead, Aniki.
Okay, I have a totally different experience with this, so I just want to say what my experience was. So I also took the FE and passed, but no one at my job at all, not even in R&D, knows what the FE is. So it wasn't very value add in my experience to my overall career. It definitely does depend what route you want to take in your career, because if you ever want to do consulting or governmental work, like you absolutely need it. But I would definitely say if like you get into a job and you're like considering taking it, talk with your boss about it first, because if they don't see it as value add to your job and like that's the industry you want to stay in, then in my opinion, it's not really worth the time or the money to spend studying on it. But again, it's totally up to what career you see for yourself.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that it is not value added for my current position, but that I have other future goals that I think many of you know. So like in construction, anything to do with that, you need to have an FE or PE and be supervised by someone above. So when you take the FE, there's like, I think 7 different disciplines, and there's one that's like general engineering, and then the other 6 are like your core engineering, chemical, mechanical, forgets all the other civil, things like that. So there's I think it's like 6 that are specialized, and then 1 general one, and then that's for the FE. And then when you go to take the PE, you actually have a specialty that you take that in. So I'm gonna get mine in like metallurgical something. I don't know, it's for materials. It's a very long name, too many names for these things. But I think that one, there's about 20 different areas you can get them in. And so the one you would get it in would be the area that you've done a lot of work in, and that like a PE could sign off for you, and like seeing that you've done that. I did learn that you don't have to work directly with the PE, so that's something recent. And the other reason that I decided to get my PE is that my dad's also an engineer and he has his PE. And so I think like even if you don't end up sitting for the PE test, like that FE is good after you take it, and you're an engineer in training forever, because legally until you have your PE, you like can't call yourself an engineer, even though like we all do. You just have like an engineering degree, or you studied engineering. So that's kind of an important like legal distinction.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. I definitely did not know all of that. And I wonder, because I know that like me and Claire like computer science, I don't think we like, I don't know if we have like an equivalent kind of thing, because I don't think so, but like.
Yeah, I don't think there's definitely not like an FEPE, but maybe something else.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. And does anyone else from the audience have any questions? I want to make sure that like, if you guys do, you have a chance to ask them. You can also like type in the chat at any point if you want. Okay, if not, I'm gonna go ahead and like change the topic a little bit more about like company culture and like kind of about the diversity in your guys' workplace, since we are like Society of Women Engineers. So I was wondering if any of you guys are involved in like SWE or any like ERGs at all at your company, and if those ERGs are like supportive and if you find them useful. And Kat, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, yeah, so I am a member of SWE Phoenix. I've been a little too busy, honestly, to kind of have an active role in that. But at my place of employment, we have a group called Empower, and I'm a co-chair. So it's like SWE, but within the office. So me and another one of my female coworkers, I basically get paid to plan TED Talks and gather all the men in the office and talk about implicit bias, talk about things that concern women in male-dominated fields. I get paid to do that and organize things, and it's not just serious. We have games that we play. We also have ladies' lunches where we'll all go together, all the ladies in the office, and some men have also joined us, and we'll go and just enjoy lunch together. So that is something that I am a part of as far as a minority group. And unlike, I guess, you, Aniki and Emily, you guys talked about research. At my interview, the majority of questions were about SWE, my involvement in SWE, and what I brought to the table as a female. And so right away, me being a female and wanting to educate the rest of my coworkers, who I think there's only like 7 girls in my office. So that already was a huge selling point, having an interest in that and being outspoken through SWE. So.
And can I just ask you a follow-up? Because I know that you said you're in SWE Phoenix. So like, can you tell us about kind of how you got started with that and like some of the differences between like SWE ASU? Because I think that we do partner with them a lot. So maybe like some of our members would like eventually want to join SWE Phoenix one day as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I feel like kind of like a bad SWE Phoenix member, but right before you graduate, I got a postcard in the mail saying congratulations from SWE Phoenix, and then it had a URL website that I just went into and then paid $50 to join. And then I went on the website and I just had a really difficult time finding like, where are the meetings? What am I supposed to do? And then I recently got an email from Barbara Haney. I don't know how involved she still is, but she works in the Career Center at ASU. So she recently emailed me. So hopefully once my FE is done here soon, I'll be able to dedicate some more time into that, because I definitely think having SWE is such a huge networking opportunity. Even if you're not looking for a job, just having women in similar positions and being able to say, yeah, this is weird, or this is how much I'm getting paid, and having those conversations, it's a really good avenue of support.
Okay, thank you. And then if Emily, do you want to talk about your companies like ERGs and which ones you're involved in?
Yeah, so I've only worked at the company since June, and so obviously we've had like COVID the entire time, to the point that like I haven't seen most of my coworkers in person since they interviewed me in January. But also I never have my camera on at work, which is beautiful because no one else does. But I would say that they have actually been really useful, especially during COVID, because of just joining the company. There is like a women, I think there's a couple different women's ones. I honestly went through the list and just added myself to every ERG because I was like, I just want to meet people. So I'm in a women's leadership team, and they have a lot of like coffee chats, and we'll do them like over Zoom, and they'll even like give out prizes for like having a cute coffee mug or whatever. They have some where like executives come in and talk. A few other things. So that's the one that's like been active during COVID. I'm not sure like how the others are, but I mentioned a few in the chat. There's usually like LGBTQ ones for women, and then ones for minority groups, such as Hispanic or Black, etc. Like all those. So at my previous company, the Hispanic organization was really big, and like just everyone was in it, like no matter your background, just like everyone went to their stuff because it was just super fun. So I would say like you don't have to be limited, and it kind of just depends on the company. I feel like I can't talk about company culture just because I don't know what it's normally like, but everyone has been super welcoming, even though we're like, online. So yeah, and I've really enjoyed being able to have that avenue and getting to hear from people not on my team or people that I'm not like thrown into a meeting with, because when you're only online, it is really hard to figure out who are the other people in my office, because I have no idea who the other people in my office are. So yeah, so that's been really great for me.
Okay, thank you. And then Aniki, if you wanted to share as well.
Yeah, so I'm in a few groups at Intel. I'm in the SWE organization. I'm in AKI. AKI doesn't do a whole lot, usually just like fab tours, but sometimes like happy hours, things like that I'll go to. But other than that, I'm in iGlobe, which is basically the LGBTQ organization of Intel. And And yeah, same. Since COVID hit, there's been limited stuff, but I do think that Intel does a pretty good job like pushing to a more online based virtual kind of bonding activity. So like I'm also in the recent college grad group. There's probably an event every week for that that's virtual. So there's a lot to do. I mean, there's literally probably 100+ groups at Intel that you can join based on what you're into, like hobbies, and they have like chess club and basketball stuff. And yeah, it depends what you're into, but.
That's really cool. And do you guys feel like these helped you guys kind of like get adjusted to your company better? Because I feel like it'd be kind of scary to like, I don't know, just like going from like college to a job just seems like it might be like a little lonely at first just because you don't really know anyone, and like getting adjusted to the company. Is it easier because of these ERGs, or was there something else that made that kind of easier for you to like get to know people?
Yeah, the ERGs definitely make it easier. I think also kind of joining a company where they have a well-known and well-established company culture that is like widely known as good, especially with the larger companies. Like when I interned at Henkel, I was like, this is not for me. Like they do not treat their employees well. As an intern, you know, they just treated me like an intern. Whereas at Intel, like I really enjoyed the company culture. Everyone was welcoming, no matter if, I mean, they have all sorts of different employees globally. And they always, you know, take the projects of the interns very seriously, which I thought was very different than a lot of other companies.
I totally agree. I think before I even got hired, my boss said that Henderson was the Google of mechanical engineering plumbing firms. And I thought that was just like a selling point. And I think within my first week, they had like a Nerf gun fight in the office. And it really is like the culture is great. I think it's really good for your mind. We're so active in our minds thinking of technical things constantly that it's like physically draining. So when you get a moment to go axe throwing or going golfing or just playing activities, or we have a volunteer organization where we plan events with local community nonprofits, and we get paid to go pick up trash on the highway or plant flowers. So for moments like that where you're able to remove yourself and just kind of get to know your coworkers as people and know people's personalities, it was a huge selling point. It was great, and so much so that in like the year that I've been here, I feel like my coworkers have made my work environment so much better, and they've become a second family to me. So.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, my fire alarm started going off and I was like, what the heck is going on? Anyways.
You're good. Just about like how ERGs or like other aspects of your company helped you like get adjusted at first, like since you probably didn't really know a lot of people going into your like first day.
Yeah, I would say, to be honest, because of COVID, I still don't feel like I'm 100% acclimated. I do go in person for half the week. And that's because of like the manufacturing schedule. They don't want us to get any of the technicians sick, and so we like have to work on the same schedule as them if we want to go in. And so I feel like when I'm in person, like I know like a lot of different people, I know like all the technicians and stuff. So I think that's been really useful. And then in meetings, kind of paying attention to like who knows what topics, so then like if I have an issue or whatever, I can message them and ask them questions. And then yeah, I think the employee resource group at least helped me feel like, okay, like this is the normal, this is like the company norms that I'm going through, just because like with COVID, so like I just didn't expect to go into a company like this. But I mean, I feel good about the company, but I can't say like I don't know what the normal day-to-day is compared to what I experience now. So I think that that's important, especially for anyone graduating in December, to think about is like, you know, what it is now may not be what it is forever. Hopefully not. We're all crossing our fingers, I'm sure. But that's just something to consider. Like, it may seem like really dull if you have to like go in person to interview, but I'm sure it's like bustling when, you know, people are actually working in person.
Okay, and then I saw that there was a question in the chat that said, what was the job search process like with the current COVID situation? Has it made the process more difficult? What have you done differently? And I know Emily talked about that a little bit in the chat, but like going off of this conversation, if Emily wanted to like add more to that. And also for those of you that didn't get a job during COVID, maybe just like, what was that like for you? Did you apply to like a whole bunch of companies? Or like, what kind of advice do you have for us if we are going through COVID and having a difficult time like getting connected to people virtually?
Yeah, so what I did, so I applied over winter break right before I graduated. So I graduated in the spring. I just sat down for like 3 hours every day and applied. Actually, if they asked me for a cover letter, I don't know if this is good advice, but I just skipped it. And if they like required it, I honestly just submitted my transcript again because I was like, no one's gonna read it. I'm sorry. I've never like, other than when I applied for Disney, no one that I know of has read it. Where I was like, honestly, if they want me to be a good writer, I don't want to do that job anyways. So that was kind of my attitude. So I could get through a lot of applications really quickly that way. And especially knowing like where I was willing to live after having my internship in small town Indiana. I was like, I'm never living in a small town again. This is terrible. Target was 30 minutes away. Like it just shouldn't be that way. So I think it's like important to know like location that you want, and also if you know industries, but it's just as important to know what you don't want to do, but be open to new opportunities. So I used Handshake. I used like a ton of different websites, but I kind of was running out of ideas. One of the other things I used was from the SWE conferences, like all the companies that would come to those conferences, even though I didn't get a chance to talk to them, I would go look them up and I would apply on their website. Like after the conference because I knew that they were like hiring women or that they were hiring in general. So I did that, and then Handshake, and I literally just put in like whatever has the whatever application is going to get pulled first, like expires soon. Those are the ones I applied to first. So I got through, I think through like March, which is like very difficult to do. But if you apply to a ton, you can do that. And I think it was kind of a lot of weeding out companies. So there were some that, I had that first interview and like, I know you just like really want that job, but sometimes it's just not going to be a good fit. Like there were some that honestly were offering me so little. I was like, that's not even like an engineer, like even without my master's. So that was one thing I took into consideration. And then also just like what the job is, how many hours they wanted. Sometimes it's not a good fit. I guess it depends on how desperate or how flexible you're willing to be during this time. So I think that's important as well.
Okay, thank you. And then Nikki, did you have any advice for us, or how many jobs did you apply for when you were looking?
So I applied, I mean, not to many, to be honest. I had an offer from Intel, like withstanding. So I applied to like a few, and honestly, I only applied to a few others to like negotiate up my salary. I worked for Henkel, and I like knew after that, no, I don't want to do like any consumer goods. Like they do thermal adhesives, but that wasn't at the site I worked at. And then I got an offer from Dow Chemical. And I'm glad I didn't take that because now I manage them as a supplier and it would be awful. But yeah, honestly, I didn't apply to many because right after my internship, I got a full-time offer, and most internships you have like right afterward, they'll give you a full-time offer. You generally have to do something like really bad for them to not give you one.
Okay, so then applying to those other jobs helped you to negotiate? Like, were you able to negotiate your salary then with Intel?
Yeah, I negotiated, but I used kind of the offer from Dow to negotiate, but I also had interned 3 times and in the same group. So I like had some level of technical expertise on the product that I managed. So I was able to negotiate kind of multiple ways, but definitely I would say if you have an offer in hand, don't be overly confident and try to go out and find other jobs. But yeah, if you can in a short amount of time to just leverage that, then it can only work for your favor.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Okay, and then Kat, how was the job search for you?
Yeah, so the last semester of my senior year, I was super stressed out. I was probably applying to like 10 to 15 applications through Handshake, through companies I wanted on their website. And I heard back from like maybe 3. I didn't even get like, no, it was radio silence. And I was like, I'm never going to find a job. I'm going to be like a hobo engineer. I'm very like dramatic and stressed, but I had a great GPA. I had good experience. I just didn't understand what I was doing wrong. But I actually met my now boss at an architectural firm that I went to. It was like a networking social event. And I just went because there was free wine and free food. And this man just came up to me and was like, oh, I heard you're an engineer. Like, what are your goals after graduating? And I told him I wanted to be a PE and kind of I wanted to be in design work. And then he did most of the talking. And he was just like, let me tell you about my company. And it was mainly him. And then I would just ask questions out of like genuine curiosity. I'd never heard of this company. I'd never heard of the industry. I didn't know too much about it. So just being friendly and having an open mind ended up getting me a job. So I think I went into career fairs with the mindset of this is what I want to do. This is the company I want to work for. And it wasn't until I had an open mind, which Allie actually gave me that advice. She's like, you just need to apply everywhere. Like, have an open mind. It'll work out where it works out. And that was exactly true. So just be friendly. Ask questions, be curious, smile, and that really goes a long way.
I just want to add on, yeah, I totally agree. Have that open mind. Like, to be honest, I did not want to go in the semiconductor industry. I did not take a single class in semiconductors, which is crazy because ASU offers so many, but I actually like avoided them like the plague. But I really do enjoy my job, like not just saying that because I have it, but like I do actually think it's interesting and it's not like exactly what everyone had described it as. So I would definitely say have a more open mind because honestly, by like sophomore year, I was like, I'm never working for the semiconductor industry. And so when I interviewed for my job, my now boss was like, you don't have any semiconductor industry experience or like any semiconductor experience at all, like just like nothing. And I was like, you know what, like I know I don't, but I'm a good learner. Like I can learn anything. Like if I put my mind to it and you give me time, like I will learn it and I'll be able to apply it. And I learned like a couple months ago that was the reason that I got the job or that I got moved on to the second interview was because of saying that and just being like, I'm like, he, I guess, just really likes people who are very confident and like go-getters. And so I guess that like really resonated with him. But I was like, what do I have to lose? Like he was trying to reject me. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, I have skills. I have 2 different degrees. So I'd say just like be confident in yourself. Don't be like a jerk about it. But you know, if I'm like, hey, I can learn. That's what engineering degrees are. They're just problem solving and like learning how to learn. So
Thank you. That's some really great advice. I know that like sometimes it's hard to be confident in like interviews, but like that's really awesome that you were able to like say that and that helped you land your job.
actually, when I got off the phone, I was really mad. And I was like, I'm never working for that guy. He doesn't even think I can do it. And then like ended up working for him. He's awesome, but it's fine.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so probably last question, maybe second to last question, but kind of interesting question is, where do you guys see yourself in 5 years, and how or why do you think your career goals have changed since college? Okay, I don't know who wants to take this one first. Kat or Nikki, yeah.
All right. So I definitely recommend when you start a new job to have a like career discussion with your manager and like just, I mean, obviously when you enter industry, do not be fooled. You will have no idea what you want to do in 5 years. So I also recommend don't tell your manager what you think you want to do in 5 years because you need time to like get accustomed to the company and get accustomed to your job, and then like things change fast. So for me personally, I feel like I'm still getting like a deep technical knowledge in my job. So that's what I want to like focus on at least for the next 2 years. And then I would like to go into more of like a cross commodity like technical expert role, and then eventually into like a technical management role. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, it was just how has that like changed since like
okay,
college,
yeah.
if it has.
Yes. Okay. So when I started in chemie, I started because I really wanted to do like wastewater treatment and like save the planet. Throughout chemie, I realized for me personally, there was way more interesting things about chemie and materials and engineering in general. So that I would say from the time I started chemie, my interest has completely shifted. So that's why I recommend like not deciding exactly, like locking down your 5-year plan. Like that's a lot of stress, especially during COVID. Like you have no idea where you're going to end up in the next 5 years. And you don't worry too much. Like if you have a good manager, they will guide you and they will know they've been there a long time. They know where you're going to be a good plug-in. And I would definitely get multiple mentors across whatever company you choose to work in, no matter the department. Because most people like move into new jobs based on who they know, especially within the same company. So that can be really beneficial to kind of help you find out like what you want to do over the next 5 years, right? So talking to other people who do different things, like you can make a connection that you actually think is more interesting of a role for you.
Okay, thank you for that. Kat, do you have, sorry, I forgot the question. It was, where do you see yourself in 5 years and how and why have these changed since college?
Yeah, so in 5 years, I would like to be a PE. No, I'm going to say it. I'm going to be a PE. You got to do these affirmations, right? But yeah, I'd like to get my PE, my license. And then I'd like to work more on the project management side. I have always kind of known this about myself. In group work in school, I kind of did more of the like, this is our schedule, we need to follow this. I cleaned up things, I delivered it. I was keeping everybody on track more so than the more technical person. So in my capstone, I was kind of more of a project lead than really like grinder, like plugging in numbers. So that's always been my strength in just organizing and getting things to the finish line. And that's something that I have the opportunity to work towards in my career. So I'd like to do more of that and working directly with clients and business development. I like the people side of my job more so than heavy technical aspects. I like developing relationships and getting to know people outside of work and just kind of seeing how people operate. So that's a direction that I'd like to continue moving in.
That's awesome. And then can I just ask you a quick follow-up? So do you think that moving like upwards in your company is something that's like encouraged and like easy to do? Like, did you just talk with your manager about it, like to help you like get started for that journey?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's similar in other companies, but my company in particular has their core value is seeing the potential in each of their employees and getting them to reach that full potential. So from day one, like my interview, they were like, where do you see yourself? What are your strengths? I had to take like an actual 45-minute like strength assessment to see how my own personality works with other people. So that was a huge asset. And then just having those conversations with my managers. When I started having those conversations of, these are my strengths, this is what I like to do, this is the role I played in teamwork and group work in school, I started getting invited to client business developing, networking. I had no like experience with the company and they still put me in front of clients to talk to and just socialize with. And so that was already getting me prepped for that. And then just given more responsibility on projects, organizing events through Empower and through our Give Back volunteer coordination. So I got thrown into responsibilities. They were like, you want to go in this direction? Here are some steps that you can do. And it wasn't anything out of reach. It was just things to kind of build up in the industry on top of my already qualities that I had from school.
Okay, thank you. And then Emily, can you tell us about where you see yourself in 5 years and how or why your career goals have changed since college?
Yeah, so I would say that Aniki has a good point where like I don't feel like I know enough to say exactly where I want to be in 5 years. I have some long-term goals definitely, but within this company, I definitely want to get my FE. So I'm hoping to take that test by December. Crossing my fingers, I'm like close. So I'm hoping to take that and pass, and then that will start kind of my clock towards my PE. So hoping to get my PE in the next couple of years, and I found like mentors to be able to look over me for that so that I can get my sign off. So those are kind of things I'm working towards. I would say in engineering in general, for all the different companies I've worked for, it's not exactly a vertical ladder, and you may not even want to move vertically. I would say like you could stay at like the same, like the job I do. There's a woman who's been doing it that is my mentor that's done it for 30 years. You bet she gets paid a ton more than I do to do it. And like, you don't necessarily have to move upward. You can just become the expert in that. So she's considered like the expert that everybody goes to. Yeah, I have no idea how much she makes, but you know what I'm talking about, where like you don't necessarily need to move upwards. So I don't think that that has to be your goal. I think in engineering, there's kind of two paths. You can stay in the technical side, or you can end up more in the like managerial side. You can still manage people with technical aspects, but just depending on the industry you're in and your company culture, those could be two different things. They could be the same thing. And so that's something to consider. I know that like probably at the end of my career, I'd like to do more like managerial stuff, but for now, like I'm enjoying the engineering and especially getting to use my material science degree. So for now, that's like where I want to stay, and especially will help me get my PE because it's literally what I want to get my PE. And so I think for right now, I want to stay on the same team, and I just have so much learning to do. So.
Awesome, thank you. And we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Kat, Nikki, and Emily for taking your time to share with us, all of your advice tonight. I saw that Kat put her email in the chat. If you guys are okay with it, I can go ahead and share all of your emails with everyone in case anyone has additional questions, or maybe if anyone that didn't come tonight has any questions for you about your company or just anything in general, I can share guys' emails with everyone. But yeah, thank you to everyone for coming tonight. It was really great hearing from all of you. I know that I definitely learned a lot tonight. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
It's good to see you all. Good luck the rest of the semester, and stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.
Wash your hands.
Thanks.